My name is Gregory, and what I'm about to tell you happened last December, when I found myself completely alone in my house for an entire week. My girlfriend was visiting her parents for the holidays, and I stayed behind in our quiet, upstate New York neighborhood because of work. With most of my neighbors away for Christmas, I had the whole street to myself. At first, I loved the idea of the peace and quiet, just me, some rest, and a chance to catch up on shows in cozy solitude. But what happened that week still lives rent-free in my head. It was the second night alone, around 6:30 p.m. and already pitch dark, with a fresh layer of snow covering everything. I was in the kitchen, a self-admitted non-chef attempting to make a simple pasta dinner, with the TV on just to fill the empty silence of the house. That's when I heard it. Took me a second to process the sound. It was singing. I muted the TV and listened. It was definitely outside. Getting clearer, someone was singing Jingle Bells. I thought maybe it was kids, but this voice was a grown man's. I walked to my front door, and the closer I got, the louder it became, until it sounded like he was right on my stoop. With a weird feeling in my stomach, I opened the door. There, in the porch light, stood a man around 35, underdressed for the cold, staring at my welcome mat and singing intently, as if he didn't even notice me. I forced a smile, confused. I'd never had a caroler, let alone a solo adult man. He didn't look dangerous, just confused or perhaps special needs, because he showed no reaction to me. When he finished the song, he didn't speak or leave. He just took a breath and started Jingle Bells all over again in the same slow, off-key tone, but now he was looking directly into my eyes. My smile dropped. It was just weird. I stood there for almost 4 minutes as he looped the song before I finally said, "Thank you," and slowly closed the door. But the singing didn't stop. He kept going right outside my door. I tried to ignore it during dinner, but the knowledge that this strange, fixated man was standing inches from my personal space made the whole house feel uncomfortable. After about 10 straight minutes, the singing suddenly stopped. The silence actually made me jump. I crept to the window and saw he hadn't left. He'd just moved to the end of my driveway, standing perfectly still in the snow, staring at my house. Waiting. That felt worse. I opened the door and told him this was private property, that he needed to leave, and finally threatened to call the police. He didn't move a muscle. Not wanting to escalate if he was mentally unwell, I decided to go upstairs to my bedroom, lock the door, and try to relax. From my window, I saw he was gone from the driveway. Thank God. But 20 minutes later, as I was in bed reading, I heard it again. Jingle bells. This time, it was coming from my backyard. I rushed to the window and looked down. He was standing directly below me in the snow, staring up at my window while he sang. I slid the window open and yelled I was calling the police. The singing stopped instantly. He stood in total silence for 3 terrifying seconds, and then he suddenly burst into a full sprint toward my back door. The second he was out of view, I heard the most insane sound of my life, a deranged, death metal scream at the top of his lungs, echoing through the yard, followed by violent banging as he tried to kick the door in. The impacts shook the house. I grabbed my phone, called 911, hid in my closet with a baseball bat, and waited in pure terror until the police arrived. They found the back door still locked, and deep footprints in the snow leading from my window to the door and off into the woods. They brushed it off, saying people act strange and to just keep my doors locked. But after they left, the house felt horribly cold and empty. I spent the rest of the week double-checking every lock, completely over my alone time, and desperately waiting for my girlfriend to come home. That man never returned, at least not that I know of. This story is from my Christmas experience about 10 years ago, when I was just 6 years old. We were getting ready for the holiday, and I was riding high from my November birthday, which famously happened on the same day as Odell Beckham Jr.'s incredible catch. My family were Cowboys fans, but I was a Giants fan, and that catch was the talk of my birthday celebration. For my birthday, I got tickets to the Mavericks versus Wizards NBA game on December 30th. It was going to be my first NBA game ever. Then, on Christmas Day, I got an Odell Beckham Jr. jersey and Mavericks gear, and another set of tickets to a game on December 27th against the Oklahoma City Thunder. I was over the moon. The first game was amazing. The Mavs won a close one, and the arena atmosphere was insane. A couple days later, we went back for the second game. This time, our seats were higher up. The Mavs were killing it, up by 20 or 30 at halftime. My family went to get food. My dad went to a different stand, and I stayed with my brother in line. While he was paying, I walked about 30 feet away to throw some candy wrappers away. That's when a tall white man approached me and asked, "Hey, are you lost?" I shook my head. He said he didn't see my parents and told me, "Let's go look," taking my hand. As a naive kid, I went with him. He led me up toward the nosebleeds, saying we'd use the intercom to find my parents. We waited at the top for about 10 minutes until the coast was clear. Then he tried to steer me toward an emergency exit. That's when stranger danger kicked in. The guilt and fear sunk in. When he let go of my hand to check his phone, I ran. I ran all the way back to the stands, and as I did, I saw him standing there with a small grin on his face. I found my brother, who hadn't told my parents I was missing. I said I was okay and didn't tell a soul. We drove home after the game, and I was quiet in the car. Then, a loud horn screeched behind us. I turned. It was him, driving a truck with 3 other men inside, pulling up next to our car. My parents yelled, but the men just stared. I wanted to speak up, but I couldn't. That night, I woke up with chills. A light was flashing at my window. I looked out, expecting something festive, but instead saw that same man standing outside, shining a flashlight into my bedroom. I screamed and ran to my parents. They searched but found nothing, chalking it up to a car's shadow. A few days later, on New Year's Eve, as we counted down to midnight, the doorbell rang. I heard the man's voice. I was 100% sure it was him. I told my parents everything about the arena, escaping, but they didn't believe me, saying he was just handing out lost dog flyers. Then, exactly 1 year later on New Year's Eve, there was a knock at my bedroom window. I'd almost forgotten. I found a note taped to the glass. "This new year, you'll meet me again." My parents finally filed a report, but nothing came of it. I'm 16 now, and that experience scared me away from basketball games and made me forever close my curtains. Terrifies me that he knows where I live. I'm considering going to a Cavs versus Mavs game soon, which would be my first since that night, but I'm not sure I'm ready. I remember this night way too clearly, and even now, I think about how close my family came to something terrible. It was early December, and my wife Marianne, our 7-year-old son Andrew, and I drove up into the mountains to cut down a real Christmas tree, a dream of ours. The weather was perfectly cold and cloudy, with heavy snow on the ground. The remote tree farm was empty when we arrived, just a lit parking lot and a path into the woods. Andrew was immediately throwing snowballs, and we were all in great spirits. But the deeper we walked, the more the silence pressed in. It was so quiet it was creepy. Marian whispered she had a weird feeling and wanted to pick a tree fast. That's when I heard it, a soft crunching behind us. I turned to see a man in dark, inadequate clothing standing 20 feet back, his hands bare and red, his face pale and stiff. When he saw us looking, he smiled an off-putting smile and stepped closer, asking if we were looking for a Christmas tree in a deep, soft voice. Andrew, excited, said yes before I could stop him. Marian quickly lied, saying we were just walking. The man stepped closer again and said, "Don't worry, I'm not a park ranger," as if he knew why we lied. Everything about him felt wrong. He looked desperate, hungry, homeless. I told Marian we were leaving. As we walked past him back to the car, he smiled and nodded. Every time I looked back, he was closer, his steps dragging in the snow. Once we saw the parking lot, I told them to run. Marian scooped up Andrew and took off. I turned, holding my axe, to block the path. The man had stopped. He put his hands up, still smiling, and said, "I mean no harm. Why don't you get back to your truck now?" My heart skipped. He knew we had a truck. I hurried to the lot, where Marianne was screaming my name. Both tires on one side of our pickup were slashed. As she struggled to get a 911 signal, I saw them, at least 3 more figures standing at the tree line. 2 began walking slowly toward us while a third vanished. The 911 operator, hearing the desperation in my voice, implied I should use the axe to defend my family if it came down to it. Andrew was crying. The two figures, dressed like the first man and unfazed by the cold, were now close enough to call out, "We're here to help." Then they suddenly turned and ran back into the woods. We soon heard why: police sirens. The officers arrived with spotlights blazing. Their search found only footprints leading deep into the woods, likely of drifters or squatters. They stayed with us until a tow truck could get us out of there. On the ride home, none of us spoke. We never tried to get a real tree again. What haunts me most is the realization they had been watching us from the moment we arrived. They stranded us by slashing the tires and were waiting for us to go far enough into the woods that we couldn't get back. We were lucky we trusted our instincts and left early. We were lucky I had that axe. I don't like to think about how close we came to never making it home. I still think about this one night from when I was 9 years old, a few days before Christmas. My parents were both out mom shopping, Dad working late, and I was old enough to be left alone for a bit. I was cozy on the couch by the Christmas tree, eating cookies and watching a movie, when the doorbell rang. It was oddly late for visitors. Remembering my mom's rule, I didn't answer, but I crept to the door to look through the peephole. Standing there was a man in a full Santa Claus suit coat, hat, beard, everything, but he didn't look friendly or festive. He was holding a clipboard and standing way too close to the door. I whispered, "Who is it?" He leaned in, figuring out I was a kid instantly, and put on a Santa voice, saying he had gifts for me and I should open the door. At 9, I didn't believe in Santa, and my stranger danger alarms went off. My voice cracked as I told him to go away. Then he asked the chilling question, "Are you home alone?" I felt instant regret for even speaking. I backed away and sat on the couch, frozen, hoping he'd leave. Then I heard the front doorknob twist. He was testing the lock. A moment later, I heard the same sound at the back door. He'd run around to try that one, too. That's when I snapped into action. I ran to the kitchen, called my mom, and through panicked tears told her a man dressed as Santa was trying to get in. She told me to stay hidden. I crouched behind the couch, hearing faint footsteps and taps outside, until I finally heard her car pull in. She burst through the front door, hugged me, and said she'd just seen the Santa man walking down our street. She'd confronted him from her car, and he'd nervously claimed he was collecting donations before hurrying away. She called the police. We later heard from neighbors that a man matching that description had come to their doors with a suspicious donation scam. But that doesn't change the terrifying truth. He wasn't just scamming. He had tried 2 doors to get into a house where he knew a young boy was home alone. I think about that night every Christmas when I see Santa decorations. I remember knowing, deep in my 9-year-old gut, that the man on the porch wasn't there to give gifts. He wanted something else. I was lucky the doors were locked, and my mom got home just in time. What would have happened if that door was unlocked is a thought that still terrifies me.